Scott, and today we're going to talk about core strength. So that's a topic that comes up all the time in yoga and in the fitness world in general. People want to know how to get a six-pack, how to tone up and slim down and be beach ready and blah, 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 blah. And all that's great, but I think the most important part about having a six-pack or having a really tight core is that you actually gain tons of stability in the rest of your body. And that core strength, that core stability helps with your posture, with your digestion, with your respiratory system, with all different parts of your body that you might not even be thinking of while you're, taking your selfies on Instagram or whatever. So I'm going to take this little session here and I'm going to dedicate it to core strength and 5 yoga poses that you can do to improve your core strength and stability. I hope you guys enjoy it. So we're going to talk about plank pose. It's one of those foundational core work poses that you see all the time in yoga and Pilates and fitness classes. So we're going to start off there and we're going to build the pose from the ground up. I'm also going to offer a couple of modifications for those of you who can't just jump into core pose right away and you want some building blocks to really help you build the strength along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. I like to start off in tabletop position, placing the hands nice and wide apart on the mat, really gripping in with the fingers so that you're pressing into the roots of the fingers as well as the fingertips. And then align your wrists directly under your shoulders. For me, I have my knees a little bit behind my hips because I just know that's where it's comfortable, but quite a few people sort of start off with the knees under the hips and then just feel what works for you. You'll begin by pressing your toes into the mat and lifting the hips and really pressing back through the heels of both feet. You'll want your feet to be about hip distance apart, and then when you want to get fancy and you want to increase the amount of work that you do, you can play around with bringing them closer or farther apart or doing one hand or just whatever, but we'll get to all that later. So we're going to start off with the hands about shoulder distance apart. The feet are hip distance apart, and you're going to focus on finding a place for your hips that brings your head, your shoulders, your hips in line with one another. It's common to have your hips sag if you feel like you're lacking strength. Don't do that. If anything, you'll want to lift the hips a little bit higher to protect the low back. Another modification is to put the knees down on the floor and really focus on the upper body stability. You're pressing the hands into the floor, lifting out of the shoulders rather than just sort of slunching down and just saying like, yeah, I did it. No, you didn't. You just hurt yourself. So press into your hands, lift away from the shoulders, start here, and then when you feel ready, you can experiment with lifting the knees away from the floor. Now, that is plank. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do with plank, changing sides and doing lots of modifications to increase the difficulty. So we're going to do a little bit of that now. Side plank is another common option for working the obliques. So you can start off in traditional plank, move your right hand almost directly under your face, kind of scoot over that right foot too, and then roll over onto the outer blade of your right foot. Keep pressing into that hand, lifting out of the shoulders, and keep the hips from sagging by lifting up the hips as well. And you can take the gaze up to the fingertips if that feels good. Once you're comfortable here, you can begin playing around with what you do with that upper leg. Some people find that that's a lot to just jump into. So again, if you get into it and it's just not right for you yet, put that bottom knee down on the mat and it makes a world of difference. So you're starting off in hands and knees, the knee comes in instead of the foot, and then you just rotate on top of that knee, pressing the top hip back so that it's stacked directly over your bottom hip, and doing the same thing with the shoulders as well. And again, you can take your gaze up to the top finger and continue to lift through the hips and just create a nice, solid, flat plane with the body. So that's one modification that you can take with side plank. Another common pose that you're going to run into is actually a series of poses. It'll be integrated into a lot of flows to sort of build up some inner heat, get the core nice nice and warm and build a little bit of shoulder stability. So this one they call like knee to elbow, or a couple of different names, but once you see it, you'll probably recognize it. This one starts off in tabletop as well. Your wrists are directly under the shoulders, your knees are under the hips, and then you can start off by lifting the right heel towards the ceiling while keeping the toes pointed downward. This isn't so much for your core strength, but it is good for working some of your inner thigh muscles. So from here, you can begin to slowly lift onto the fingertips of your left hand. And then when you're ready, bring that left bicep near the left ear. And begin drawing yourself into one plank. And then bring the knee in towards the elbow and really squeeze everything in. And then just reverse that motion. Do a couple of reps of that and see how you feel. There are a couple of modifications for this if doing the hand and the leg at once just seems like a lot for you right now. You can always start off just by finding the balance with the leg extended. Play around with the height of the leg, where you're positioning your hips, making sure that the hips are level to the floor and that you're not hiking up out of that back hip. You can start here and just begin drawing the knee in and pressing the heel back. And then you can alternate by doing the arm. And then when you're ready, you can combine those two motions together. And I would recommend doing as many reps of that as you can. If you start to feel fatigue in the wrist, that's probably because you're sinking back into the back heel of your hand. Again, even in a pose that's focusing on your core strength, you want to be aware of what's happening in the rest of your body. That's something that I had trouble with when I first started, and I'm still working on it now. But you really want to press into the mounds of the fingers and the fingertips to alleviate any pressure in the carpal tunnel anytime that you're doing anything down on your hands or hands and knees. So just something to keep in mind as you're working. So the next pose that we're going to do would be reclined staff pose leg lifts. I absolutely hate these, but they're really good for your lower abdomen and those little muscles at the bottom of your six pack that usually turn into like a 4-pack and a little bit of a bulge. That's because it's really hard to work those lower muscles, and so this next exercise will be really great for that. So what you'll want to do is grab a block. If you don't have a block, that's fine. You don't really need it, but it is a prop that's helpful. If you don't have a block, then you can substitute a pillow or something like that. But just come onto your mat, extend your legs, and you'll start off by placing the block maybe between your shins or your thighs. It's easier if you have the block on the narrow setting, and I think it's a little bit more of a challenge if the block is wider. Just play around with it and see what's comfortable for you. The block isn't even like the most important part of this. It's just kind of a tool to help you. So we're going to bring in the legs, and then we're just going to come lying flat onto the back. Here you'll want to make sure that you're pressing your sacrum down into the mat. That's that little bony part where your spine connects with your hips and everything gets really firm. You want to press that down into the mat and still maintain the natural lumbar curve of your spine. So right now I can actually stick my hand under my low back because I'm keeping that natural lift there. So go ahead and let the shoulders relax into the mat, maybe even press the shoulder blades down. And then you're just going to engage the core as you begin to lift your legs up, bringing the block with you. And then as you exhale, you let the heels come back down to the ground just as slowly as you lifted it. And then do that a million more times. So we're going to inhale as we lift, trying not to lift the back away from the floor completely. And then exhale as you lower the heels back down to the ground with lots of control. Oh, I'm already tired, but that's kind of how it goes. If you would like some modifications for that, you can start off by just doing one leg and then doing the other. So again, you're getting your nice position in the hips, and then you just lift one leg. And then you lift the other. You're going to feel this in your hip flexors and your quads as well, and maybe a little bit less in the core when you're just lifting one leg at a time, but that's probably what you're going for if you're just getting started with these core exercises. So that's a modification that you can take to help you build up to doing both legs at the same time. Then of course there's the side-to-side variations, which are also pretty fun. And by fun I mean terrible. So you're going to come lying onto your back. Again, same concept, pressing down through the sacrum, keeping that curved and lumbar spine. But this time, go ahead and bring your knees so that they're about your knees are bent and your shins are about parallel to the floor. Stick that block in there. Bring the arms wide and really press the hands down into the floor. And then begin to let your knees drop off to one side. And then lift and bring them over to the other. You're going to keep doing this and just sort of rocking back and forth. You'll notice that the sacrum has to lift off of the ground in this one as you're going from one side to the other, and that's okay. But you just want to make sure that you're not completely rounding through the spine, because that's kind of like cheating in this one. You'll want to keep your thighs distance from the body and try to keep the shins parallel to the floor, and do maybe 5 reps on each side just to get started. And then when you're ready, you can kick it up a notch by straightening the legs and doing it with your legs straight. So this is going to work the outside of the core and a little bit with your back, and that's always fun. I can barely do like 3 of these, I'm not going to lie, guys. So you're going to let the hips fall over. Try to keep the outer shoulder pressed down into the mat. That's like the ideal, of course. And then you're just going to lift both legs back up, bring them to the other side, and try to let them fall so that they're perpendicular to your mat. That's how you're going to get the most out of these rotations. Bring it back up, and then repeat. Okay, so now we're going to play around with Warrior 3. Warrior 3 is, I think, out of the poses we've done so far, it's the one that's going to engage your back the most. People kind of forget about the back when they talk about the core. They're all about the front, but the back is actually a huge key component of your core strength and your stability. So you need to integrate some poses into your routine that will not just strengthen, the six-pack, but also everything that's going on the back and the sides as well. Warrior 3 is perfect for that. So we're going to start off with the option of the block. I actually really like to start here because it's a good way to get your alignment and everything in order before you start moving stuff around. So I'm going to bring the block on the highest setting towards the front of my mat. And then I'm just going to bring my feet about hip width apart and just let myself come on up, get nice and long, and then as I exhale, I'm going to fold forward. So from here, make sure that your feet are still parallel with the long edges of your mat. And you can position your block right where you need it to really lift up and lengthen through the spine. So from here is where we're going to start flying a little bit. So you're going to go ahead and let that left heel come up towards the ceiling, toes pointed towards the floor, and then stop. Take a look at your hips and try to figure out if you got like this hip hacked up real high or if it's kind of sagging a little bit. Try to bring the left hip so that it's in line with the right hip and that your toes are still facing towards the ground and you're still engaging the glutes and the hamstrings to keep that leg lifted. So then you'll just kind of begin lifting onto the fingertips. See if that feels stable. And then try bringing the hands to the heart center. You can start there. And if you're having trouble with the balance, just always bring your hands back down to the block. That's one way you can work on the balance. You can also think about pressing into the big toe right into this mound on your standing foot, and that's going to help bring you a little bit of stability into the standing leg. So that's something that you can keep in mind as you're working on Warrior 3. You'll also want to be mindful of your standing knee. So if you tend to lock the knee, or if you're a little unstable in that knee for any reason, you'll want to make sure that you're keeping it supported. For those of you who lock the knee, supporting it means actually bending the knee a little bit. It doesn't have to be a very drastic bend, but just a little micro bend to keep a little bit of flexibility there. For those of you who have any sort of instability in the knee, you might want to skip this pose overall. But if you're in a point where you can put a lot of weight on that knee, then just wear your brace or just be mindful of it as you're going through this portion of your core work. So you can start off just by finding where your warrior 3 is with this little arm variation. And then you can start playing around with it. So you can come on up and bring the knee forward, and then just sort of rotate and pivot like this. And then you can start playing around with the arms as well. So you can take the arms out to the side like airplane wings, or out to the side as a T, or start to bring them forward. And all of those options are going to be great for your back, as well as your glutes and your hamstrings and all sorts of great parts of your body that you want to work. So try that and try a couple of those modifications and see what works for you. We're going to start off in down dog and then draw one leg forward at a time. This is something that I encourage you to leave as like your last, flow of your core exercise, just because it really helps to have everything warmed up a little bit first. And it's just kind of a way to end with a bang. So we're going to start off in hands and knees pose. And then we're going to shift back to downward facing dog, tucking the toes under, lifting the hips up and back. Really begin to root down into the hands and lengthen those heels towards the floor. Let the head relax. And then from here, you'll go ahead and start to lift up one leg. And you can let the hip open or keep the hip closed. It's up to you. So you're going to lift one leg and then bring it forward. Let the shin hover over the ground and draw the knee in and up as close as you can to your body. And then take it back. And then you can switch sides. And then do that a billion times. So one of the great things about it is that, again, you are working the core in the front, but you're also working with your back and your glutes and your hammies. And if you decide to raise up and lift on that standing leg, you can also get a little bit out of the calves. So it's really a multifunctional workout that I hope you really enjoy. So if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions even for other core poses that you've tried and you've really, really loved, please feel free to email me. Just drop me a line or make a comment below and we'll chat it up. Talk to you later. Bye.